I totally forgot that I didn't shoot like the end of the roll, and I was like, oh my god, there's nothing on this thing. I'm gonna look like a total idiot. Nope, everything's there. Looks sick. Several weeks ago, I made a video about Super 8 film and Super 8 cameras, and I mentioned something kind of like offhandedly in the middle of one of the clips, and then just kind of moved on. And depending on the film stock you choose, whether tungsten balanced or not, you would adjust the color conversion filter switch to either daylight or artificial lighting. Before we talk about that though, let's talk about the Kelvin scale and tungsten film to understand warm and cool tones of light. For tungsten film stocks, these are balanced to render light at around 3200 Kelvin on the Kelvin scale compared to something like daylight, which is around 5500 Kelvin. And because the tonality, whether it's warmer or a cooler tone, can be enumerated, we can put it on a scale. And that scale is the Kelvin scale. It's basically an assessment of a light source, whether it's a warmer tone or a cooler tone, or maybe somewhere even in the middle. So with this camera, you can actually see it has a built-in filter that you can engage depending on the type of film that you plan to shoot. But in layman's terms, it's a warming filter. It's there to mimic the output of a tungsten light bulb onto tungsten film. So it takes daylight or fluorescent lighting and turns it into basically one big tungsten light source. It makes sense. But what's interesting is that you really don't see this feature in any sort of stills camera that I'm really familiar with. But thankfully, that's where the 85 series of filters come in. And this series of filters is actually made to help you use your tungsten-based film stocks outdoors. Okay, so things that you're going to notice as far as examples go deal in the fact that these are going to have a color cast. Out of all of the photos that I took on this particular walk, there were two that really stood out as far as examples, things to really show you kind of what we're talking about here. The first one that I have is of this ballpark, and essentially you can really tell. Don't like pay attention to the light leak, that doesn't really matter, but what does matter is the fact that on the left we have the properly exposed, properly colored image, and then on the right we have the color casted image. A color cast is essentially just where the white balance wasn't quite where it should be, causing it to be a little bit bluer in this case than what reality was. So in the case of tungsten film, that's what you're going to end up with, is the color cast of blue, because essentially the light isn't as warm as it needs to be in order for that tungsten film to take it in and then render it at a right level, you know? So essentially, instead of it being white, it's blue. And that's kind of what you see on the first one. And then if we look at the second one, the same thing happens with this second filter image, and essentially it's the same thing. So in here, instead of having actually this house is yellow, so I don't know, it's just really not contrasty. That might have something to do with the C41. I don't know, but essentially you have like a yellow house and a tree and then a blue sky. On the left, it is properly colored where you have the proper colors in it, and on the right we have a image which has basically like a teal cast to it. And you're going to notice this more in certain areas of certain photos. I had plenty where you didn't actually see this as much. And then I had some like these. These are the two most obvious. So they're the two that I chose to give to you because it really exemplifies what will happen when you don't do it the right way, at least in camera. And essentially, this is what you get. You have a camera, you have a photo, which has a teal color cast. So that's what I have. Inevitably, the proverbial pudding is proof. In that, you should probably be filtering these kinds of photos if you're using tungsten-based film stocks outdoors during daylight, something like an 800T by Cinestill, or really Kodak Vision3, which is the same thing. All of the things we talked about in the Remjet video apply here, in that these film stocks are tungsten-based film stocks. They're labeled with T because they are, and thus you should be filtering them to, at least, if nothing else, get them right in camera first. The counter argument to this is that you can do a lot of white balancing in post through either Photoshop or Lightroom, and though I do agree Really, the big thing here is that for true photographers like yourself and me, probably, I at least hope so, is the fact that we try to do it our best in camera inevitably, so that way we get the best negative to scan from and we can do work from there. However, if this is something that you don't shoot all the time, maybe you're not really into tungsten-based stocks, if you're not using these things a lot, maybe you don't want to buy a specific filter just to do this like once or twice. That I totally understand. And if that's the case, then probably, yeah, just try doing the white balancing through like post processing. It'll probably work. But keep that in mind if you are someone who is involved in tungsten based film stocks, or if you're really wanting to get into this, or even if you're going to shoot it more than like a couple of times. Really, to me, it just kind of makes sense because it's just another tool in the arsenal. So that's my soapbox. That's kind of the final thoughts that I have on this. So keep all of those in mind and definitely let me know what you think. And hopefully this helps you out. I look forward to seeing you guys, as usual, as always, in the next one.